It was a hot afternoon in the outskirts of a small town, where the cries of two infants echoed from inside a cramped room. Their mother, Linda, moved like a woman on the edge, throwing garments into a faded travel bag. Her lips were pressed tight, her movements sharp. Her face was thunderclouds, dark, unforgiving. Her husband, Peter, stood in the doorway, helpless. "The babies, they're crying," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Linda didn't stop. She didn't even flinch. "They're your responsibility now," she snapped. "I'm leaving." Peter took a slow step forward. "Please, Linda. If not for me, then for them. They need their mother." Linda's laugh was hollow. "I didn't marry to suffer. Since you lost your job, our lives have become a joke. We're struggling, but—" "I'm tired of struggling," she barked. "Tired of this box we call a house, tired of eating plain rice every day, tired of being poor. You think love is enough? Love doesn't feed babies." She zipped the bag and slung it over her shoulder. She paused, looked at Peter with disdain, then muttered the words that would scar him forever. "Honestly, I don't even care if those babies live or die." She stormed out, leaving Peter standing in silence. Only the cries of Mary and Naomi, his 3-month-old twin daughters, filled the room now. He turned to them, tears lining his eyes. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." He picked them up gently, one in each arm, and rocked them until the sobs softened. His voice trembled as he said, "I may not have money, but I promise. I'll be the best father in the world." The next morning, Peter woke with nothing but resolve. No money, no food, and 2 mouths to feed. He strapped the girls to his chest with a cloth, rented a rusted wheelbarrow from a neighbor, and walked to the town market. All day, he pushed heavy loads for traders. His muscles burned, his back ached, but he didn't complain. He just kept going. Some people pitied him, some mocked him. One woman shook her head and said loudly, "When you were enjoying life, you didn't think of tomorrow. Now suffer." But an old woman slipped a 500 naira note into his hand. "God sees your heart," she said. Peter bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ma." That evening, he visited a small pharmacy and explained his situation. The pharmacist gave him powdered infant milk, medicine, and a few supplies, on discount. Peter paid with the few notes he had and returned home with relief. This routine became his life. Every day, he pushed loads. Every evening, he returned with milk and medicine. He rocked the babies, bathed them, talked to them like they understood every word. Then one day, a neighbor approached him, Mama Caro. Elderly, gentle, always barefoot. "Let me watch them while you work," she offered. Peter hesitated. But she insisted. "I raised 6 children. These 2 will be in safe hands." From that day, Mama Caro became more than a neighbor. She became their second mother. Years passed. The twins grew. They never asked why they had no mother, because they never felt the absence. Peter gave them everything he had. And what he couldn't give in wealth, he made up for with love. Mary and Naomi were bright, respectful, and hardworking. Peter ensured they went to school, even if it meant carrying twice the load during market hours. Mama Caro helped with homework, hair plaiting, and storytelling at night. At 18, the twins graduated from community secondary school with honors. They studied relentlessly for their exams, WAEC and JAM. The results arrived. Mary, 325. Naomi, 341. Peter held the slips like treasure. "Medicine and surgery," he read, beaming. "My girls." The 3 of them danced around the small room, laughing. But later that night, Peter sat alone, staring at the same papers. The smile on his face faded. "How will I pay for this?" he murmured. He felt crushed. After all the years of hard work, he had nothing to give them now. He got up the next morning before dawn, dressed simply, and went to the house of a known wealthy businessman in town. He knocked until the man opened the gate. "What do you want?" the man asked, irritated. Peter dropped to his knees. "Please. I'll be your cleaner, cook, anything. Just help me send my daughters to school." The man scoffed. "Two in medical school? That's a rich man's burden." He shut the gate. Peter tried again, 5 different homes. All slammed the door in his face. He returned home tired, ashamed. For 2 days, he said little. The girls noticed but didn't push. Then, on the 3rd day, he called them in. "My daughters. I'm sorry. I promised you the world. But I have nothing." Naomi took his hand. "Daddy, you've given us everything." Mary nodded. "Whether we go to university or not, we will always be proud to be your daughters." That night, Peter cried quietly beside his mattress. "God, please," he prayed. "I've come this far. Don't let it end here." The twins, awake in the next room, heard his sobs. They didn't sleep that night. The next morning, they made their decision. They deferred their admission. Then they walked through the town, hand in hand, looking for work. After many rejections, a modest restaurant took them in. They wore aprons, served food, and smiled at rude customers. At night, they cleaned until their backs ached. But every day, they saved. 1 month passed. Then 2. Then 5. They found a small space on a street corner and opened a food stall. Their dishes were simple but delicious. Their kindness kept people coming back. Then one evening, as Mary cleaned the table, she spotted something underneath, a black briefcase. "Naomi, look." They opened it cautiously. Inside were piles of documents and stacks of dollars. "Someone important forgot this," Naomi said. They took it home. Peter listened quietly, then nodded. "You did the right thing." The next morning, just as they arrived to open the stall, they saw a black SUV parked outside. A man in a tailored suit was pacing beside it, his forehead lined with worry. "Excuse me," he said, rushing toward them. "Did either of you happen to find a black briefcase here yesterday?" Mary nodded and handed it over. "We kept it safe." The man opened it quickly, checked the contents, then sighed in deep relief. "Thank you very much," he said quickly, then returned to his car and drove away. Naomi blinked. "Not even a thank you gift?" Mary shrugged. "We didn't do it for that." A few hours later, the same SUV returned. This time, the man stepped out with a calm smile. "My name is Prince Tony," he said. "And yesterday, you saved something that could have ruined my family. That briefcase held more than money, it held documents tied to everything I own." He motioned for them to follow. Curious and slightly hesitant, they stepped into his car. 15 minutes later, they stood in front of a newly constructed building with glass windows, a signboard, and fresh paint. "This," Prince Tony said, "is now yours." The sisters gasped. He continued, "It's a fully equipped restaurant. You don't owe me anything. I'm rewarding honesty. And I believe people like you deserve more in this world." Mary and Naomi stood speechless. Then tears filled their eyes. Later that evening, they rushed to the market and found their father sitting beside his old wheelbarrow. "Daddy," they cried, hugging him tightly. "What's going on?" Peter asked, laughing in confusion. "Come with us," Naomi said, holding his hand. When they arrived, he stared at the building as if it were a dream. Mary pointed. "It's ours, Daddy. A man gave it to us. For doing the right thing." Peter stepped forward, his legs trembling. He placed a hand on the wall and whispered, "Thank you, Lord." That night, they sat together on the restaurant's front steps. "Daddy," Mary said, "you've done enough. No more wheelbarrow." Peter didn't respond right away. He looked at their hands, once tiny, now calloused from labor. He smiled. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll rest." The restaurant opened the next week. Prince Tony had kept his promise. It had gas cookers, a walk-in fridge, shelves of supplies, dining tables, and even uniforms. The girls brought in all their charm and hard-earned lessons. They treated customers with warmth and served each dish with care. Word spread quickly. Within 3 months, the place was booming. Yet they didn't forget Mama Caro. She was now too old to work. So the girls renovated her small home, paid for a live-in nurse, and sent her meals every day. She was no longer just their second mother, she was their heart. Then one afternoon, a tired-looking woman walked into the restaurant. "I need work," she said, eyes low. "I can clean, wash dishes, anything." Mary and Naomi exchanged a glance. Though they had no vacancy, something about the woman's desperation moved them. "You can start in the back," Mary said. The woman bowed. "Thank you." What they didn't know was that she was their mother. Linda. After leaving Peter, her life had spiraled through wealth, affairs, divorce, and finally, loneliness. Now broken and empty, she had returned to the town she once turned her back on. For weeks, she worked quietly in the kitchen, unaware that the young women she served were her daughters. Then one day, Peter visited. He walked into the kitchen and stopped cold. Linda. She hadn't seen him. But he backed away and found Mary and Naomi. "Who is that woman working in your kitchen?" "A new cleaner," Naomi replied. "Why?" Peter's voice was dry. "That's your mother." Both girls froze. "What?" Mary whispered. Peter nodded. "After she left, I burned every photo. I didn't want you to grow up with anger. But that's her." They walked with him to the kitchen. Linda looked up and saw Peter. Her face paled. Her knees buckled. Peter turned to her. "They are your daughters." Linda gasped, her lips trembling. I didn't know. I didn't recognize them." Mary's expression turned cold. "You need to leave." She handed her a bundle of cash. "This is more than what you've earned." Linda cried. "Please, give me a chance. I was foolish, young." Naomi interrupted, "Don't justify it. Just apologize." Linda collapsed to her knees. "I am sorry. I know I don't deserve it, but please, please don't send me away." Mary's fists clenched. Her voice cracked. "You left us to die." Naomi placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. "Let's not carry this pain forever." Peter said nothing. He simply walked out. Later that night, the girls sat in silence. Finally, Mary nodded. "She can stay. But only under watch." They made her a matron, overseeing basic duties. She worked quietly, always apologetic. But slowly, the change came. Linda began scolding workers, raising her voice, blaming others. The old bitterness crept back. Customers noticed. Staff avoided her. The restaurant's atmosphere dimmed. One evening, Naomi confronted her. "We gave you a second chance. Don't destroy what we built." Linda snapped. "You treat your father like a king. What about me?" Mary warned, "If you ever speak ill of our father again, you won't have the chance to speak at all." Peter was called in. He listened quietly, then said, "She is your mother. But if she stays, your legacy will fall." They made the decision. The next day, they let Linda go. She didn't beg this time. She walked out, head high, eyes hollow. They still helped her. They opened a shop for her near her rented home. But they kept their distance. Without Linda around, peace returned. The restaurant's energy revived. The staff relaxed. Customers who had stopped coming trickled back. Laughter floated through the dining area again. Mary and Naomi thrived. They were no longer just two hard-working girls with a dream. They were businesswomen. Leaders. Inspirations. Peter rested well for the first time in years. He had traded sweat and blisters for a garden and a peaceful home. He would often sit outside with a cup of tea, watching children pass by, listening to the sound of birds and the occasional hum of motorcycles. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel peace. But something had shifted within Mary and Naomi. One evening, after they had closed up and were counting the day's sales, Naomi paused. "Mary," she said softly, "do you still want to become a doctor?" Mary looked at her, thoughtful. "I did. But now, I don't know." Naomi nodded. "Me too." They both knew that their hearts had changed. The restaurant, their story, their growth, it had all become bigger than the initial dream. They were already healing people. Just not with stethoscopes, but with food, jobs, and kindness. Peter noticed the shift too. One night, he called them to sit beside him. "You once had a dream," he said. "But you've built something just as powerful. Don't feel guilty for choosing a new path." The girls hugged him. "Thank you, Daddy." Months passed. Then love arrived. Mary met Dapo, a soft-spoken man who ran a printing business nearby. Naomi found Uche, a cheerful and witty food vendor who admired her sense of purpose. Both men were hard-working and full of respect. They didn't chase status, they sought meaning. It wasn't long before the twins brought them home. Peter welcomed them with caution, but soon with open arms. He saw in their eyes what mattered most: integrity. Soon, wedding plans were underway. But amidst the joy came a thought. Mary brought it up gently. "Daddy, when we marry, we'll be moving out. You'll be alone." Naomi nodded. "And we don't want that." Peter smiled. "You've already given me more than I ever imagined. I'll be okay." Mary hesitated. "There's someone we want you to meet." Peter raised an eyebrow. "She works in our Lagos branch," Naomi said. "Her name is Ruth. She's a widow, has 2 kids. She's kind. She reminds us of peace." Peter was quiet. "You want me to remarry?" Mary answered, "We want you to be loved." After some thought, Peter agreed to meet her. The meeting was quiet. Honest. Gentle. Ruth didn't try to impress. She simply listened, spoke with clarity, and shared her story with grace. Peter felt no spark of romance, but something deeper: peace, companionship. A few weeks later, he gave his blessing. And so, a triple wedding was planned. Mary, Naomi, and Peter, 3 lives, 3 unions, all celebrated on the same day. The church overflowed with joy. Mama Caro, now frail but radiant, stood as chief mother of the day. Her eyes shimmered with tears as she watched the family she once cradled in her arms take flight. Vows were exchanged. Rings were slipped onto fingers. Music rang out. The streets danced. People cheered. When Peter kissed Ruth's hand and said, "Thank you for walking this road with me," there wasn't a dry eye in the hall. After the wedding, the new family adapted quickly. Mary and Naomi moved into their new homes, visiting Peter and Ruth weekly. The restaurant expanded even further, with new branches opening across 3 cities. Their story made it into local newspapers. One headline read, "From Wheelbarrow to Empire, the twin sisters who fed a nation." But none of the success changed their hearts. They continued to pay staff generously. They funded scholarships for girls in rural schools. They never raised their voices. They never lost their gratitude. And they never stopped caring for Linda. Though she no longer spoke to them, they made sure her shop was stocked, her rent paid, her needs met. They didn't expect her to thank them. But they chose to give. One afternoon, Peter visited her. He sat outside her shop and said, "We both made mistakes." Linda looked away. "I forgave you long ago," Peter said. She wiped her eyes and nodded. "I'm glad you found peace." "I didn't find it," he said. "Our daughters gave it to me." That evening, as he sat in the garden, Ruth brought him tea. They sat in silence, hands resting gently on one another's. Peter looked out at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God." As the weeks passed, Peter and Ruth's home blossomed into a place of calm and laughter. Her 2 children, a boy and a girl, slowly warmed up to their new family. Mary and Naomi treated them like younger siblings, and their care extended to school fees, birthday celebrations, and guidance. Despite being in different homes, the family remained close-knit. Sundays were sacred, always shared at Peter's home, where they would cook together, laugh over old stories, and offer prayers of thanks. The restaurant chain thrived like never before. With a growing team and strong leadership, the sisters created a work culture based on kindness and dignity. They launched a mentorship program for young girls, trained single mothers in culinary skills, and hosted free community meals every first Sunday. One afternoon, they received a letter. A prestigious business magazine had selected them for a feature story titled Queens of Grace. The journalist wrote, "This is not just a tale of success, but of spirit, sacrifice, and strength." It was published nationwide. The publicity brought even more foot traffic. They hired more staff and opened a headquarters in the city center. But through it all, the sisters remained grounded. "Never forget why we started," Mary would remind the staff. Meanwhile, Ruth brought a new serenity to Peter's life. They spent evenings walking through the garden, talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes they sat in silence, content just to be. One evening, Peter took her hand and said, "You've given me something I thought I had lost forever, companionship." Ruth smiled, eyes warm. "And you gave me a family again." Back in the shop Linda managed, the days were quieter. She ran it alone. Sometimes customers asked about her daughters. She would answer vaguely. Deep down, she had changed. The bitterness had faded. All that remained was a hollow regret and a flickering hope that someday, something might heal. One rainy afternoon, Naomi stood outside her mother's shop with an umbrella. Linda looked up. Her breath caught. "Naomi?" Naomi smiled gently. "We just came to check on you. And drop off some supplies." Mary appeared behind her, holding a box. "How's the business?" Linda swallowed. "It's steady." There was a long pause. No one spoke. Then Linda reached for the box. "Thank you." Naomi nodded. "You're welcome." And they walked away. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something. Later that night, Linda sat on her shop stool, holding a receipt from her last customer. Her eyes misted. She whispered, "Maybe someday." Back at the family home, Peter gathered everyone for a quiet dinner. Afterward, he raised his cup of palm wine. "To Mama Caro," he said. "The woman who started it all." They toasted with watery eyes. Though now bedridden, Mama Caro was never far from their thoughts. They had hired a private nurse and furnished her room with care. Her walls were lined with photographs of Mary and Naomi, their growth through the years, a visual testimony to her love. A few weeks later, she passed peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was simple but full of honor. Peter spoke softly at her graveside. "She gave us all something no riches could buy, unconditional love." Mary and Naomi stood beside him, heads bowed. And the town mourned with them. In the months that followed, Peter and Ruth started a small charity in Mama Caro's name. They focused on feeding abandoned children and helping single fathers. At the restaurant, a framed photo of Mama Caro now hung near the entrance. "She's why we're here," Naomi would say to new staff. As the business grew, so did their story. Newspapers, blogs, and even TV shows invited them for interviews. But they didn't chase fame. Instead, they stayed loyal to what mattered: family, faith, and giving back. Then, one morning, something unexpected happened. Ruth's son, Junior, asked Peter, "Grandpa, can I call you Daddy?" Peter smiled, his eyes damp. "Yes, son. You already do." That night, he told Ruth, "I thought I'd live out my last days in silence. But life gave me another chapter." She held his hand and whispered, "And it's your best one yet." The final chapter of their story unfolded slowly, with joy and gentleness. Years passed, but the bonds in their blended family only deepened. Mary and Naomi continued growing the business. They diversified, launching a food product line, publishing a cookbook titled From Tears to Tables, and hosting small conferences for young entrepreneurs. Peter, though older, remained active in his own way. He led the charity's board, visited schools, and gave talks to young fathers about resilience, forgiveness, and fatherhood. At home, Ruth and Peter lived quietly. She planted herbs in the backyard, and he kept birds in a simple wooden coop. Every evening, they sat on their porch, holding hands and watching the sky change color. There was a softness in their home, one that had taken a lifetime to find. One Sunday morning, as the family gathered again for brunch, Junior, Ruth's son, brought his school project to Peter. "I had to write about a hero," Junior said. "I wrote about you." Peter was stunned. "Why me?" Junior smiled. "Because you saved your daughters when you had nothing. And now everyone eats at their restaurant." Peter hugged him tightly. "Thank you, son." Later that night, Peter pulled out a worn photo. It was the only one he hadn't burned long ago. It showed Mary and Naomi as babies, asleep in his arms, his eyes tired but full of love. He wept, not in sorrow, but in awe. One morning, the sisters surprised him with a visit. They brought a television crew. "Daddy," Mary said, "we're being honored today, and we want you with us." They escorted him to a hall packed with community members, journalists, and city leaders. On stage, a presenter read their story aloud. He ended with, "And behind these women stands a father who refused to abandon them, even when he was abandoned himself." Peter was invited on stage. He stood, hands shaking, and said, "I didn't do anything special. I just refused to stop loving my daughters." The applause lasted a full minute. Weeks later, Linda sent a message through a courier. It was short: "Thank you for not letting me starve. I don't deserve it. But thank you." The girls didn't respond. But they kept sending supplies. Eventually, Linda moved away. No one heard from her again. The seasons continued. Mary and Naomi had children of their own. They taught them how to cook, how to pray, how to say thank you. They named their daughters after Mama Caro. Peter grew slower but never bitter. He once said to Ruth, "Even if I die tomorrow, I will go smiling." But he didn't die tomorrow. He lived long enough to walk his granddaughters to school, to dance at his daughter's 10th restaurant opening, to sit under the tree in his garden and say, "It was all worth it." One evening, as the sun dipped low and a golden hush fell over the world, Peter sat quietly in his chair, a smile on his face. He closed his eyes and did not wake up. They buried him beside Mama Caro, in a small plot under the tree where he once rocked his daughters to sleep. The funeral was attended by hundreds. Stories of his kindness echoed through the service. Mary stood to speak. Her voice trembled but held firm. Our Father didn't just raise us, He protected us, served us, sacrificed everything for us. When our mother left, He stayed. When the world judged, He carried us on His back. When we doubted ourselves, He lifted us with love. Every blessing in our life is because of Him. Naomi added, He didn't die a rich man. But He gave us riches no money could match. They poured sand over His coffin with trembling hands, whispered prayers, and walked away, not with despair, but with purpose. The restaurant empire continued. They named their newest location, Peter's Haven. Inside its entryway was a life-sized painting. It showed Peter, standing in his old clothes, a baby tied to his chest, pushing a wooden wheelbarrow. Behind him were two grown women, Mary and Naomi, holding his hands. Beneath it read, "A father. A foundation. A future." And for years to come, customers would stand before that painting and ask the staff, was he real? And the answer would always be, yes. Very real.